At this very instant, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, there is a force inside you that is creating. It does not stop, it does not sleep, it does not judge, it simply creates. It is the silent force. For most of our lives, this force has operated on autopilot, using the old blueprints of our inherited beliefs, our fears, our doubts. It has built, with perfect fidelity, the reality we now experience. We have marveled at our good fortune and cursed our misfortunes, without realizing that both are creations of the same inner force, directed by our own consciousness, often unconsciously. This audiobook is not here to teach you to activate this power. It is already active, it is already creating. This audiobook is here to teach you to direct it. It is an operations manual for the most potent force in the universe, your own consciousness. It is the handover of the metaphysical secrets that will allow you to go from being the unconscious creator of your life to becoming its conscious commander. You will learn to stop being the subject who asks and to become the sovereign who commands. You will discover that the universe does not respond to desires, but to decrees, and that your state of being is the only command that reality is forced to obey. The silent force awaits your instructions. It's time to learn how to give them. Chapter 1. The Fraud of Asking the Truth of Command. For as long as we can remember, we have been taught a single way to interact with the power of the universe: supplication. We have been told that if we want something, we must ask for it. Ask God, the universe, destiny. We have been instructed in the art of prayer, of petition, of pleading. We kneel, clasp our hands, close our eyes, and from a place of lack, we launch our desires into the void, hoping that an external, benevolent force will take pity on us and grant us what we long for. We have built entire religions and self-help philosophies on this premise, and we have spent our lives in an endless cycle of asking, waiting, and, most of the time, feeling frustrated by the silence we receive in response. The first and most brutal of the forbidden truths is this: the act of asking is the direct cause of you not receiving. It is not a paradox. It is the physics of consciousness, the psychology of supplication, affirming lack. To understand why asking is an act of self-sabotage, we must first analyze the state of consciousness from which it originates. No one asks for something they already feel they possess. The act of asking is born, inevitably, from the consciousness of lack. When you ask, you are performing a powerful ritual of affirming lack. Each supplication is a declaration you make to the universe, and more importantly, to your own subconscious mind. The underlying message is always the same. This is not mine. I don't have it. I am separate from my desire, and I don't have the power to obtain it myself, which is why I need an external force to intervene. This posture instantly places you in a position of inferiority. You become the beggar, and the universe becomes the king. You become the effect, and the external world becomes the cause. It is the act of willingly surrendering your sovereignty. Imagine you want to manifest prosperity. You close your eyes and say, "Universe, please give me more money." What is the quantum field really hearing? It doesn't hear the words "more money." It hears the music, the vibration behind the words. And the vibration is that of fear, of anxiety, of the belief I don't have enough. And the universe, which is a perfect mirror, has no choice but to reflect your state. It gives you back more of the experience of not having enough. It presents you with more unexpected bills, more lost opportunities, more reasons for you to ask again. This is the vicious cycle in which most of humanity is trapped. They feel lack, so they ask. The act of asking reinforces their feeling of lack. The universe reflects that lack, and they, upon seeing the reflection, conclude that the only solution is to ask with more force, with more fervor, without realizing that they are digging their own grave with each new supplication. The physics of emptiness. Why the universe is deaf to please. The universe is not a conscious entity, with ears that listens to your words. It is an impersonal energy field that responds to the law of resonance. It doesn't understand your language, but it understands your vibration perfectly. Your emotional state, as we saw, is a frequency. The feeling of yearning, desire, and need is a low-frequency vibration, a vibration of contraction. It is the frequency of absence. Therefore, the law of reflection cannot bring you the presence of your desire. It can only bring you more circumstances that correspond to your vibration of absence. Imagine a person praying to heal from an illness. Their words may be of faith. I believe I am going to heal. But if the underlying feeling is the fear of the illness, the terror of the pain, the desperation of the uncertainty, then the true prayer, the true vibration they are emitting, is that of the illness. And the subconscious, which is the mind of feeling, receives the command illness and continues to manifest it. Not because it is malicious, but because it is obedient. The subconscious does not operate with logic. It operates with conviction. And asking is a confession of doubt. It is admitting that you don't believe your desire is really yours, or that you have the power to claim it. The subconscious hears doubt, not desire. An architect cannot build a building if the client, every 5 minutes, tells him he is not sure he wants the building or can afford it. Doubt paralyzes creation. From a quantum perspective, the act of asking is the act of observing the absence of what you want. As we have seen, your consciousness is the observer that collapses the wave of potentiality into a particle of experience. When you ask for something, you are focusing all the light of your consciousness on the fact that you don't have it. You are literally collapsing the reality of not having it. To manifest something, you must withdraw your observation from the reality of lack and place it firmly in the reality where your desire already exists as a potentiality and feel it as a fact. But this is an art that we will explore later. The religion of powerlessness. Why then is this idea of asking so deeply rooted in our collective psyche? Because the belief in an external power that grants favors is the foundation of the religion of powerlessness. Many power structures throughout history have understood that the most effective way to control the masses is to convince them that power resides outside of them. If you can convince people that they are unworthy sinners, that they are victims of fate, that they need an intermediary, a priest, a guru, an institution, to communicate with the source of power, then you have created a perfect system of dependence. The truly forbidden knowledge, the great metaphysical secret, is not a magic formula for asking better. It is the revelation that there is no one to ask. The power is not up there. It is in here. The truth is that you are not a subject in the kingdom of a distant God. You are a cell in the mind of God, and as such, you have direct and inherent access to all the power of that mind. You don't need to ask. You just need to remember who you are and start acting accordingly. This is the leap from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. The victim asks. The creator decrees. The victim waits. The creator assumes. The victim begs. The creator receives. And it is through this audiobook that you will learn to make that leap. We will not give you a new and improved manual of supplications. We will give you the operations manual of your own sovereign creative power. We have exposed the fraud of asking. We have seen how this act, taught as a pillar of faith, is in reality a trap that chains us to a cycle of lack and waiting. The question that arises naturally, with an almost existential urgency, is, if we don't ask, then what do we do? Do we resign ourselves to a passive fate? Do we abandon all hope of change? Quite the opposite. The answer is the first great secret of conscious manifestation, the first pillar of forbidden metaphysics. We stop asking, and we start commanding. This is the quantum leap from victim consciousness to creator consciousness. It is the transition from the beggar to the sovereign. The beggar kneels, holds out his hand, and asks the universe for alms. His power resides outside of him. The sovereign stands tall, plants himself in the center of his kingdom, and decrees the law. His power emanates from his own being. A command or decree is not an arrogant request. It is not an order given from the ego that seeks to dominate. A decree, in its purest form, is a serene and aligned declaration of a truth that already exists on the plane of consciousness. It is the act of giving voice to an invisible reality, so that it can manifest in the visible world. When you stop asking, you stop admitting lack. When you decree, you are assuming wholeness. You are changing your identity. You are no longer the person who needs wealth. You become the person who is wealth. You are no longer the person who seeks love. You become the embodiment of love. This is the fundamental difference. Supplication asks the mirror to change its reflection. The decree changes the face that is reflected in the mirror. The supreme decree, the power of I am. At the heart of this sovereign practice are the two most powerful words in human language. The master command of creation, I am. In mystical traditions, I am is the sacred name of divinity, the declaration of pure existence, of the first cause. When you utter these words, you are not simply describing a quality of your personality. You are invoking your own divine nature. You are declaring your unity with the source of all power. Your subconscious mind is absolutely literal. Whatever you put after I am, it accepts as an accomplished fact about your identity, and it immediately gets to work to reflect that identity in your reality. We have used this power against ourselves our entire lives. I'm so clumsy. I am a financial disaster. I'm always tired. Each of these phrases is a spell, a decree that, repeated with conviction, has built the very reality we complain about. The first act of mastery is to become a guardian of these two words. It is to refuse to put anything after I am that is not the expression of your highest vision for yourself. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets transforms his language. He no longer asks, he decrees. Instead of "Please, universe, give me more money," the initiate centers himself and decrees, I am a magnet for abundance and prosperity. Money flows to me in expected and unexpected ways. Instead of I wish I could find love, the initiate declares, I am the embodiment of love and wholeness, and I attract relationships that are a perfect reflection of my own inner harmony. Instead of I need to heal, the initiate affirms, I am the perfect expression of health and vitality. Every cell in my body knows and manifests its original perfection. This is not a word game. It is a fundamental change of the cause. You are ceasing to be an effect that reacts to life to become the cause that creates it. The workshop of the sovereign mind, integrated practices. The initiate in this knowledge does not leave his transformation to chance. He cultivates it with deliberate practice in the workshop of his own consciousness. The first practice is the audit of the habit of asking. The master, to free himself from a program, must first make it visible. For a week he becomes a silent observer of his own inner language and his prayers. He takes his journal and without judgment writes down every time his mind goes into supplication mode. I wish I had. I need to. Please, let this happen. At the end of the week, he reads the log and becomes aware of how often he has been giving away his power and affirming his own lack. Once the initiate has identified his language of supplication, he begins the alchemical work of linguistic transmutation. He takes each asking phrase he has identified, and like a poet who refines a verse, he rewrites it as a claiming or commanding phrase. I wish my boss would value me more is transmuted into, I am a valuable professional, and my contribution is recognized and rewarded generously. I need to find a solution to this problem is transmuted into I am the source of wisdom and creativity. The perfect solution already resides within me and is revealed to me with ease. This exercise creates a new spellbook, a glossary of power he can refer to retrain his inner dialogue. Finally, the initiate knows that the word is only the beginning. The command must be embodied. The final and most powerful practice is to act as if. The master asks himself, if I were already the person who has received everything they desire, how would I walk through this room? How would I talk on the phone? How would I make the small decisions of my day? And then he begins to act from that certainty, not as a charade, but as a dress rehearsal for his new reality. He walks with the straight back of confidence. He speaks with the calm of security. He makes decisions from abundance, not from fear. This act of embodiment is the most potent signal he can send to his subconscious. He is telling it, not with words, but with the totality of his being. The old movie is over. This is the new reality. Project this. The fraud has been exposed. The door to the prison of supplication has been opened. You have learned that the universe does not respond to beggars, but to sovereigns. It does not respond to need, but to certainty. Chapter 2. The Living Mirror. The Law of Resonance. We come to the second and most revealing of the metaphysical secrets, The universe is a living mirror. This is not a simple metaphor. It is the most precise description of the mechanics of reality, a law known in ancient traditions as the principle of correspondence, and which modern physics calls the law of resonance. The law states that your external reality, your health, your wealth, your relationships, is not a solid, independent entity. It is a reflection, a flawless, unfiltered, and brutally honest reflection of your dominant state of consciousness. The world is not happening to you, it is responding to you. Imagine that your consciousness is a movie projector of infinite power. The movie inside the projector is the sum total of your habitual beliefs, thoughts, and emotions. When you turn on the projector, the movie is emitted and projected onto the vast screen of the universe. What you see on the screen is not the universe itself, it is the movie you are projecting. Most of us spend our entire lives trying to change the movie by shouting at the screen. We complain about the images, we fight against them, we try to paint over them from the outside, without realizing that the only way to change the reflection is to enter the projection booth and change the movie we are emitting from within. The physics of the mirror, from vibration to manifestation. How does this mechanism work? It's not magic, it's the physics of consciousness. Your dominant state of being, as we have seen, is a vibrational signature. It's a note that you constantly emit to the quantum field. The field, which is an ocean of infinite potentiality, has no choice but to organize the energy and matter around you to resonate with that note. The universe is deaf to your words if they are not backed by your vibration. You can spend all day repeating affirmations of wealth, but if in your body, in your heart, the music that is playing is the vibration of fear and scarcity, that is the true signal you are sending. And the universe, which is exquisitely sensitive to your music, will respond to the dominant vibration. To understand this principle in depth, we must analyze the mirror on the three great planes of human experience. The mental plane, the reflection of your beliefs. Your inner world on a mental level is composed of your beliefs and your dominant thought patterns. This is the script that runs in the projector of your mind. The external world reflects this script with perfect fidelity, manifesting as the recurring themes and situations in your life. Think of the dramas that seem to repeat in your existence, often with different characters, but with the same script. Perhaps you have the abandonment pattern. You change partners, but each one, in one way or another, ends up abandoning you. Perhaps you have the non-recognition pattern. You change jobs, but in each one you feel invisible, undervalued, overlooked for promotions. Perhaps you have the almost success pattern. You get right to the edge of a great achievement, and at the last minute something always goes wrong and ruins everything. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets, when faced with one of these recurring patterns, does not ask with frustration, "Why is this happening to me again?" He asks with a deep curiosity, "Interesting. What belief in me is still so powerful as to project this same movie over and over again?" The external pattern is not the prison. The prison is the internal belief, and the pattern is simply the jailer who shows you with brutal kindness where the lock is. These are not destinies. They are reflections. They are the external manifestation of a root belief, of a subconscious program. The person with the abandonment pattern probably holds the belief, "I am not worthy of unconditional love," or "people always leave." The person with the non-recognition pattern believes deep down that "my work is not good enough." And the person with the almost success pattern probably harbors a deep fear of success and visibility. The emotional plane, the reflection of your vibration. Your habitual emotional state, your vibration, is perhaps the most powerful aspect of your inner world. The universe is a field of resonance. It attracts what vibrates at the same frequency. The reflection of your emotional state manifests in the quality of your relationships and the atmosphere of your environment. If you live in a state of unexpressed anger or resentment, you will attract people and situations into your life that provoke you, that push that same anger button. The world will constantly give you a reason to be angry, because anger is the frequency you are emitting. If you live in a state of constant anxiety and fear, you will perceive the world as a dangerous place. The mirror of life will show you alarming news, untrustworthy people, and reasons to worry at every turn. On the contrary, If you deliberately cultivate a state of inner peace, you will begin to notice a miraculous change. The people around you will seem calmer. The situations that used to stress you out will lose their power over you. It's not that the world has changed, it's that you have changed the frequency of your receiver, and now you tune into harmony instead of chaos. The physical plane, the reflection of your embodiment. Finally, the mirror of correspondence manifests on the densest plane, the physical. Your health and your wealth are the most tangible reflections of your inner state. Your body is the most intimate mirror. An inner state of relentless self-criticism, unresolved guilt or chronic resentment, as we have seen, translates into a body chemistry of stress. And this chemistry, sustained over time, is reflected in the body as muscle tension, inflammation, a weakened immune system, and eventually as illness. A physical symptom is not an enemy. It is the echo of an emotional scream that has not been heard. Your financial situation is a brutally honest reflection of your beliefs about abundance and deservingness. The lack of money in your bank account is not the problem, it is the symptom. The real problem is the poverty consciousness within you. It is the belief that you don't deserve it, that it's difficult, that it's selfish. The external world simply proves you right. Therefore, the work is never on the outside. It is useless to try to clean a stain on the mirror. The real work is to clean the stain on your own face. When you change the cause, what's inside, the effect, what's outside, must change by law. It is inevitable. The untrained mind, upon seeing a reflection it doesn't like, makes the universal mistake. It tries to change the mirror. It tries to convince its reflection to smile. It tries to clean a smudge on the glass. It tries to force the images to be different. All its energy is directed outward. This is the definition of struggle, effort, and frustration. It is a guaranteed path to exhaustion, because energy is wasted on the effect, not on the cause. The alchemical change, the turning point of the conscious creator, occurs at the moment he makes the radical decision to turn his back on the mirror. We stop obsessing over the external world, and we direct all our attention, all our power, all our intention to the only place where true change is possible, the origin of the image, to our own inner state. The seer knows that his only job is not to do anything in the world. His only job is to change the movie that is projected in his mind, to polish the lens of his perception. And he has an unshakable faith that if he performs this inner work diligently, the mirror by law must change its reflection. It is not a hope, it is a certainty. The mirror is not our judge, it is our greatest teacher, our most honest partner in the game of creation. It is not there to punish us, but to reveal us. It shows us, without fail, where our true work lies. The workshop of the Master of Reflections, integrated practices. The initiate in the secrets, faced with an unwanted reflection, does not lament. He does not blame. He retreats to the silent workshop of his consciousness and gets to work. His work is not one of physical effort, but of a deep self-inquiry and deliberate reprogramming. One of the most fundamental practices in this workshop is the correspondence journal. The master, at the end of his day, or when faced with a challenge, takes his journal not to complain about circumstances, but to decipher them. He describes the external event, the reflection, with an almost scientific objectivity, and then he asks the sacred question: if this external situation were a perfect mirror of my inner state, what belief, what feeling, what story within me would it be reflecting? Imagine someone whose constant reflection is a lack of recognition at work. In his journal, he does not write, "My boss is ungrateful." He writes, "External reflection. I have completed an important project and have not received any recognition." And then he begins the inquiry. What is the internal cause of this reflection? Perhaps it reflects my own belief that I am not good enough, my own inability to recognize my own worth. Perhaps it reflects my fear of becoming visible, and for that reason, I attract situations where I remain invisible. Or perhaps it reflects my own stinginess in giving recognition to others. This process of honest self-inquiry is the first step to identifying the movie that needs to be changed. Once the internal image to be changed has been identified, the master practices the as-if protocol. He dedicates himself to embodying the inner state that corresponds to the external reality he desires. He does not wait for the reflection to change to feel different. He feels different so that the reflection will change. If he wishes to be recognized, he does not beg for recognition. He enters his mental workshop and dresses in the garment of recognition. For 15 minutes a day, he deliberately cultivates the feeling of already being valued, competent, and successful. He walks like that person. He talks like that person. He feels the calm and security of that person in his own body. He is creating the internal cause, the new image, that the mirror must eventually reflect. Finally, the initiate learns to read every small reflection of his day as a message, as a personal oracle. He transforms the world from a series of random events into a constant and meaningful dialogue. If someone is unexpectedly kind, he does not consider it a coincidence. He recognizes it as a reflection of the kindness he has been cultivating in his own heart, and he thanks the mirror. If he faces a frustrating setback, he does not see it as bad luck. He sees it as an invitation from the mirror to examine the frustration or resistance that may be within himself. Every moment becomes an opportunity to calibrate the image he is projecting. You are no longer a victim of the world. You are its origin. You have learned the second great law, the one that places you at the center of your own universe. Chapter 3. The Invisible Architect, the Power of Your Beliefs. The universe is a living mirror, a field of resonance that faithfully reflects the vibration of your being. But what exactly is being reflected? Are they our passing thoughts, fluttering through our minds like butterflies? Are they our fleeting emotions, rising and falling like tides? These are just the waves on the surface of the ocean. The mirror of reality does not reflect the momentary weather. It reflects the powerful and silent underwater currents that determine the direction of the entire ocean. These currents, the root cause of the vibration you emit, the force that truly shapes your reality, are your beliefs. We now come to the secret of the power that hides behind power. If your consciousness is the projector of your life, your beliefs are the movie that plays on an infinite loop. They are the work of a director who often operates from the shadows, an architect who designs your life without you being aware of their existence. We must get to know the invisible architect. The power beyond thought, belief versus idea. It is crucial to understand the difference between a simple thought and a belief. A thought is a mental event. It's a suggestion, it's a possibility. You can think I could be a millionaire without it having a major impact on your reality. A belief is a thought that has been accepted as an absolute truth by your subconscious mind. It is a thought that has been watered with emotion and solidified by repetition until it has become a pillar of your perception of the world. It is not a possibility, it is a law in your personal universe. A thought is a visitor knocking at the door. A belief is the owner of the house who decides who gets in and who doesn't. Your subconscious mind, that faithful and powerful servant, can ignore the suggestions of 1,000 visitors, but it obeys without question every order of the owner of the house. Belief is the master switch. It is conviction that activates the infinite power of the subconscious. You do not manifest what you think. You manifest what, in the deepest part of your being, you believe to be true. The architecture of a belief, how your prison or palace is built. To become the conscious architects of our reality, we must first understand how the structures of our current mind were built. A belief is not a simple thing. It is a complex structure with foundations, walls, and a roof that defines the limits of our world. 1. The foundation, the genesis of belief. Most of our deepest and most powerful beliefs were not chosen by us, they were installed. Hypnotic childhood. In the first 7 years of life, the human brain operates predominantly in a state of theta waves, a state of hypnosis. The conscious and critical mind is not yet formed. In this stage, we are like a tape recorder, absorbing the truths of our environment, primarily from our parents, directly into our subconscious. Their words, their fears, their relationship with money and love were not suggestions. They were programs installed in our operating system. The forging of emotion. A belief can also be forged in an instant, through a highly emotionally charged event. A trauma, a humiliation, or on the contrary, a moment of triumph or deep love, can create an instant conclusion about life that is imprinted in the subconscious as an immutable law. The cement of repetition. Finally, simple thoughts, if repeated frequently enough, become beliefs. A thought like, "I'm not good at this," repeated after every small mistake, eventually hardens into the concrete of the belief, "I am a failure." 2. The walls, the filter of perception. Once a belief is installed, it becomes the architect of our perception. It acts as the primary filter through which we interpret reality. Your belief system is the foreman who ensures that only evidence that matches the original blueprint is accepted into the work of your life. Imagine two people walking down the same street. The first person operates under the root belief, "The world is a hostile and dangerous place." Their perceptual filter is programmed to look for threats. They will ignore the 100 people who walk past them with indifference or kindness, but their attention will fixate with laser precision on the one person who looks at them with suspicion. They will see the alarmist newspaper headline. They will hear the siren in the distance. At the end of the street, they will conclude that their belief has been validated. The world is, in fact, a dangerous place. The second person walks down the same street, but operates under the belief, "The world is a friendly and supportive place." Their filter is programmed to look for kindness. They will ignore the person who looks at them with suspicion, but their attention will be drawn to the couple who is laughing, to the person helping an elderly person cross the street, to the music playing from a balcony. At the end of the street, they will conclude that their belief has been validated. The world is, in fact, a friendly place. The street was the same. The objective events were the same. But the reality experienced by each was radically different, determined not by the world, but by the invisible architect within them. 3. The roof, the automatismo of behavior. Finally, our deepest beliefs not only filter our perception, they also direct our behavior automatically. A belief is not just something we have, it is something we embody. The person who believes they are unworthy of love does not just think and feel that. They behave in a way that reflects that belief. Perhaps they speak in a low tone, avoid eye contact, do not share their true opinions for fear of rejection. Their behavior is a constant, "Do not choose me," a self-fulfilling prophecy. The person who believes they are a magnet for opportunities walks with an open posture, talks enthusiastically about their projects, initiates conversations with strangers. Their behavior is a constant, "I am open to receiving," and the universe responds to that invitation. The invisibility of the architect. Why is it so difficult to change our beliefs? Because for the untrained mind, we do not see them as beliefs. We see them as reality. A fish does not know it is in water. Water is simply the world. In the same way, we are so immersed in our beliefs that we do not see them as a filter. We believe that the image projected into the mirror is the truth. The first act of the conscious creator, the first task in the workshop, is to make this invisible architect visible. It is the act of taking a step back and realizing that the way I see the world is not the way the world is. It is the way I am. This recognition is the crack in the prison wall. It is the moment the character in the movie realizes there is a projector and that perhaps, just perhaps, he can learn to change the movie. The Conscious Architect's Workshop, Integrated Practices. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets, upon realizing that he has been living in a house designed by an invisible architect, does not despair. He knows that consciousness is the light that reveals and, in revealing, gives the power to transform. He enters the workshop of his own mind to begin the great work of renovation. His work is not one of brute force, but of a subtle discipline and persistent dedication. It is the art of deconstruction and reconstruction. The first practice, the archaeology of belief. The master architect knows that, before he can draw new blueprints, he must first study the old ones. He must understand the foundations on which his current reality has been built. He becomes an archaeologist of his own mind, excavating the ruins of his past to find the origin of his present. This practice is a deep dive into the journal. The initiate takes a recurring and negative pattern from his life, the reflection in the mirror, and begins to excavate toward the root belief that supports it. He uses the 5 whys technique. If the reflection is, "I always run out of money at the end of the month," he asks himself, "Why? Because I spend impulsively. Why? Because buying gives me temporary relief from anxiety. Why do I feel anxiety? Because I'm afraid of not being enough. Why am I afraid of not being enough? Because I feel that my worth depends on what I have or what I appear to have. Why the root belief, the foundation? My worth is not intrinsic, I must earn it from the outside. Once the belief has been unearthed and exposed to the light, the initiate subjects it to a compassionate interrogation. He asks himself, whose voice is this? Did I inherit this belief from my family, from my culture? What was its original protective purpose? And what is the cost I am paying today for continuing to live under this law? This process does not seek blame, it seeks clarity. The second practice, controlled demolition. Once the faulty foundations have been identified, the architect does not ignore them or build on top of them. He performs a controlled demolition. The initiate knows that a belief is an energetic structure. To dissolve it, he must perform a ritual that his subconscious understands as an act of finalization. One of the most powerful practices is the tribunal of consciousness. The master places the old belief in the dock. He calls the prosecutor, his own inner critic, to present all the evidence that supports it. And then he calls the defense attorney, his higher self, to present all the contrary evidence and reframe it with a higher wisdom. Finally, the initiate, as the sovereign judge of his own mind, issues the final verdict. I declare this belief obsolete, invalid, and null. From this moment on, it no longer has jurisdiction in the kingdom of my mind. Another method is the fire ritual. The initiate writes the limiting belief on a piece of paper. He reads it aloud one last time, acknowledging it, and then, safely, he burns it. As he watches the flames consume the paper, he visualizes how the energy of that belief dissolves and transmutes into light. It is an act of symbolic liberation of immense power. The third practice, laying the new foundations. The architect does not leave an empty lot. On the clean and purified ground, he begins to draw the blueprint and lay the foundations of his new palace. This is the practice of the conscious installation of a new belief. The design. First, he designs the new foundation. What is the opposite empowering belief, e.g., my worth is intrinsic and inexhaustible, I am the source of my own abundance? The installation. The master uses the techniques we already know, but now with a focused intention. Repetition, the hammer. He uses the affirmation of his new belief like a hammer, gently but persistently striking the new foundation into the ground of his subconscious through the practice of the nightly lullaby and daytime reminders. Emotion, the cement. He knows that repetition alone is not enough. He must mix it with the cement of feeling. In his visualization, he not only thinks about his new belief, he feels it. He feels the calm, the freedom, and the security of the person who already lives from that truth. Embodiment, the construction. Finally, he begins to act as if. He starts to make small decisions and perform small actions in his daily life that correspond to his new belief. Each of these actions is like placing a brick on the new foundation, beginning to build the walls of his new reality. The invisible architect has been revealed. He no longer operates from the shadows. You have brought him into the light of your consciousness, and in doing so, you have taken the pencil from his hand. Your beliefs are no longer your sentence. They are your tools. You are no longer the house built by your ancestors. You are the conscious architect who chooses, in every moment, the blueprint of the mansion he is destined to inhabit. Chapter 4. The Fuel of the Soul. Emotion above logic. You have begun the work of dismantling old structures and designing new ones. But a blueprint, no matter how perfect and detailed, is just ink on paper. It is a cold idea, a silent intention. For the walls of your new reality to begin to rise, for construction to get underway, the blueprint must be handed over to the construction crew. And this crew, your subconscious mind and the energy of the universe, does not speak the language of logic. It speaks the language of fire. Now we come to the most dynamic, most potent and most misunderstood force in the entire creative process. We must explore the fuel of the soul, the electricity that gives life to your decrees, the energy that turns a thought into a thing. We must talk about emotion, the tyranny of logic. The great lie of the modern mind, our civilization, has been built on the altar of the rational mind. Since the Enlightenment, We have learned to deify logic, analysis, and intellect. We have been taught that emotions are at best a distraction and at worst a primitive weakness. They are the enemies of clarity, the chaotic forces that must be controlled, suppressed, or ignored by the monarch of reason. This belief has created a civilization of disconnected beings who live in their heads, distrusting the wisdom of their own hearts, and it is the fundamental cause of creative powerlessness. The forbidden truth is this: logic by itself has no power to create. A purely intellectual intention, an affirmation repeated without feeling, a blueprint without energy, is a command given in a foreign language to the universal builder, and it will inevitably be ignored. The universe does not respond to the brilliance of your arguments. It responds to the conviction of your feeling. Most of us live in a state of inner civil war. Our conscious mind, the logical director, wants one thing: I want to be prosperous and successful. But our subconscious mind, the emotional body, often feels the opposite: the fear of scarcity, the vibration of unworthiness, resentment toward success. In this battle between logic and emotion, between head and heart, the heart always wins. Emotion is the true commander of our reality. The alchemical fire. Emotion is energy in motion. To understand why emotion is so powerful, we must remember the nature of reality. The universe is energy. Emotion, from the Latin emovere, to move out, is not a simple psychological state. It is literally energy in motion. It is the vibration that your being emits every instant. The physics of emotion. Every emotion has a unique frequency signature. Fear, anger, and guilt are low, chaotic, and incoherent frequencies. They are like a radio station broadcasting pure static. Love, gratitude, and joy are high, ordered, and harmonious frequencies. They are a clear, powerful signal. The law of resonance dictates that the universe, as a perfect receiver, can only tune in and reflect the frequency you are emitting. Your thoughts may be trying to tune into the abundance station, but if your heart is transmitting the static of fear, fear is the only music you will hear in your reality. The biology of emotion. Your heart is the true sun of your system. As the HeartMath Institute's science has shown, it generates an electromagnetic field that is thousands of times more powerful than the brain's. This field is your true energetic signature, and the information it transmits is determined moment by moment by your emotional state. When you feel emotions of gratitude and appreciation, your heart rate becomes coherent, creating a smooth and harmonious wave. This coherent signal not only tells every cell in your body to enter a mode of repair and growth, it also emits a powerful signal of order and harmony to the quantum field. The psychology of emotion. Your subconscious mind is the emotional mind. It is not impressed by your logical arguments. It is impressed by the truth of your heart. Feeling is the bridge that carries the idea from your conscious mind to the depths of your subconscious to be executed. A belief without feeling is a command without authority. A belief charged with the conviction of a deep feeling is a decree that the subconscious cannot disobey. The feeling of the wish. Fulfilled, the master key. With this understanding, we get to the practical heart of metaphysics. The secret is not to think about your desire. It is to feel your desire, and not just any feeling. It is the art of deliberately generating the feeling of the wish already fulfilled. You don't wait to receive the money to feel grateful and secure. You generate the feeling of gratitude and security first, and that feeling becomes the magnet that attracts the money. You don't wait to find the perfect partner to feel loved and whole. You generate a state of love and wholeness in your own heart, and that state becomes the lighthouse that guides the right person to you. Imagine two people who want to manifest a loving relationship. The first focuses on logic and action. She creates a perfect profile on a dating app. She goes to social events. She does all the right things, but her inner state, her emotional fuel, is one of loneliness and neediness. Her vibration silently shouts, "I need someone to complete me." And, by the law of the mirror, she attracts people who reflect that need, often creating relationships of dependence or frustration. The second person, the initiate in the secrets, begins her work on the inside. Her first question is not, "What should I do?" but, "How would I feel if I were already in the most perfect love relationship I could imagine?" She sits in silence and cultivates that feeling. She feels the peace, the connection, the joy, the security. She bathes in that emotion until it becomes a familiar state, her new vibrational home. And only then, if she feels the impulse, does she take action in the external world. But now her actions are imbued with the energy of wholeness, not of neediness. Her magnetic vibration is that of someone who is already loved, and the universe must, by law, present her with a reflection that corresponds to that beautiful and coherent signal. Feeling is the prayer that is always heard. It is the true cause. Everything else is the effect. We know that feeling is the signature, the frequency, and the fuel of creation. It is the fire that gives life to the architect's blueprint. But this leads us to the most crucial question of the alchemist. How do you ignite this fire at will? How can we feel the joy of a reality that our senses do not yet perceive? The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets knows that he cannot think his way to a new emotion. The logical mind is the wrong tool. He must instead use the doors that lead directly to the chamber of the heart, to the workshop of the soul. The first practice, the somatic door, the body as an instrument. The master knows that emotion is not an abstract concept. It is an experience of the body. The fastest and most direct way to change a feeling is to change physiology. We don't wait to feel confident to act confidently. We act confidently to feel confident. The breath of expansion. The practice begins with breath. The initiate knows that low-vibration emotions, fear, sadness, produce shallow, chest-level breathing. High-vibration emotions, joy, peace, are associated with deep diaphragmatic breathing. To change his state, he simply begins to breathe slowly, deeply, and rhythmically, feeling his abdomen expand. This simple act sends a signal to his nervous system that everything is okay, and the chemistry of calm begins to flow. The power pose. The initiate understands that his posture is a vibrational statement. He stands and consciously adopts the physiology of his wish fulfilled. He straightens his back, relaxes his shoulders, opens his chest, and lifts his chin slightly. He holds this pose for 2 minutes. This is not an act of arrogance, but of neurological reprogramming. He is ordering his body to produce the chemistry of confidence and power, the deliberate smile. Even in the midst of a challenge, the initiate practices smiling. A genuine smile, or even a forced one at first, sends a signal to the brain to release serotonin and endorphins. It's a biological hack that tells his system, we are safe, we are in a state of well-being. By using his body as an instrument, the seer does not wait for the music of joy to play. He takes his instrument and starts playing it himself. The second practice, the resonance chamber of memory. The master understands that his past is not a sentence, but a library of emotional frequencies that he can access at will. To color his vision of the future, he often borrows the most vibrant colors from his past. This is the practice of emotional memory. The initiate, in the stillness of his inner workshop, chooses the exact emotion he wants to feel, the one that corresponds to his wish fulfilled. Let's say it's the feeling of triumph and achievement. Then he becomes an archaeologist of his own life. He scans his memory for a moment, no matter how small, where he felt that emotion purely and potently. Perhaps it was winning a sports competition in his youth, receiving a good grade, completing a difficult project at work, or learning to ride a bicycle. Once he has found the memory, he doesn't just think about it, he immerses himself in it. He relives it in the first person with all his senses. He sees what he saw, hears what he heard, feels the sun on his skin. And as the emotion of triumph begins to grow in his body, he makes the key move of the alchemist. He lets go of the story, but he retains the feeling. He releases the specific details of the memory and holds on only to the pure sensation, to the vibration of achievement. And it is this pure vibration that he now projects onto his vision of the future. He is taking the energy of a past triumph and using it to fuel the creation of a future triumph. The third practice, the auditory and visual catalyst. The initiate knows that art and music are shortcuts to changing the emotional state. He becomes a conscious curator of his sensory environment. The practice is to create vibrational anchors. The master no longer consumes art passively. He uses it as a tuning tool, symphonies of the soul. He creates specific playlists designed to evoke concrete states. He has his symphony of courage, full of epic music that makes him feel invincible, and he listens to it before an important presentation. He has his symphony of gratitude, full of soft, moving melodies, which he uses in his morning practice. The emotional vision board. The initiate creates a vision board, but his criterion for choosing the images is not just what he wants to have, but how he wants to feel. He chooses images that, when he looks at them, instantly evoke the emotion of freedom, peace, or abundance. He places this board in a visible place, and he uses it not as a reminder of his goals, but as a visual tuning fork to tune his frequency. Emotion is the fire that turns the blueprint into a palace. It is the blood that gives life to your decrees. The seer is not a simple thinker. He is an artist of feeling. He does not limit himself to seeing his new reality. He colors it with the vibration of his own heart, making it so real, so magnetic, that the universe cannot resist its call. Chapter 5. The Theater of the Future, the Art of Living as If. We enter the theater of the future, and the play we are going to rehearse is governed by the most powerful and simple principle of creation, the art of living as if. The great inversion of causality, uninitiated human lives under the tyranny of linear causality, a law that dictates seeing is believing. We wait for the external world to provide us with evidence, and only then do we allow ourselves to feel the corresponding emotion. When I see the money in my account, then I'll feel secure. When I find a partner, then I'll feel loved. When the doctor gives me a clean bill of health, then I'll feel well. In this paradigm, we are prisoners of evidence. We are reactors, not creators. Our happiness is always an effect, never a cause. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets learns to perform a radical and bold inversion of this law. He understands that the universe does not operate in a linear fashion, but holographically. And the Creator's law is the opposite. Believing is seeing, or more precisely, feeling is manifesting. The art of living as if is the act of deliberately generating, in your inner world, the state of being that corresponds to your wish already fulfilled. It's the act of feeling secure before the money arrives. It's the act of feeling loved before the partner appears. It's the act of feeling healthy before the body reflects it. This is the great inversion. You stop being a thermometer that simply reflects the room's temperature, and you become the thermostat that sets the temperature. The actor of God, embodying your divine role. The best way to understand this practice is through the metaphor of the method actor. A mediocre actor fakes it. He recites his lines, but his inner self remains untouched. His performance lacks truth and power. A method actor, on the other hand, doesn't pretend to be the character. He becomes the character. He does deep inner work to find the emotional truth of the role within himself. And then, he inhabits that state. He thinks like the character, feels like the character, walks like the character. He so completely immerses himself in the assumption of his role that his performance becomes magnetic, convincing, real. In the same way, your job as a creator is to become a method actor of your ideal self. You don't force yourself to be the confident person you want to be. In the stillness of your mind, you find the seed of security that already exists within you, and you cultivate it. You ask yourself, how would security feel in my body? And then you embody that feeling. You don't pretend to be prosperous. You assume the state of the person for whom abundance is their natural state. You feel the calm, the freedom, and the generosity of that state. It's crucial here to differentiate between living as if and pretending. Pretending is an act for the external world. It's buying a car you can't afford to project wealth to others. It is born of insecurity and the need for validation. It is an energy of lack. Living as if is an act for your inner world. It is a sacred rehearsal you perform for your single most important audience, your own subconscious mind. It's not about deceiving others. It's about convincing yourself. It is born of faith and disciplined imagination. It is an energy of wholeness. Science shows us why this is so incredibly powerful. When you act as if, you are already the person you want to be. Real and measurable changes occur in your biology, on a neurological level. The brain, as we already know, doesn't clearly distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. When you act like a confident person, walking with a straight back and speaking calmly, you are activating the neural circuits of confidence. You are literally rewiring your brain so that confidence becomes your default state. On a biochemical level, adopting the physiology of an emotion, like the smile of joy or the expansive posture of power, sends a signal to your brain to release the corresponding neurotransmitters and hormones. Your body begins to produce the chemistry of your new state. On a behavioral level, by acting as if, you start making different decisions. The person who is prosperous does not make the same financial decisions as the person who is poor. The person who is loved does not interact on their dates in the same way as the one who feels lonely. Your new actions, born from your new state, begin to create new effects in the mirror of the world. The principle is this: don't wait for your reality to change who you are. Change who you are, and your reality will have no choice but to change to reflect your new identity. The first-person immersion, the secret of the theater. The power of this technique multiplies exponentially when performed from the correct perspective. The beginner's mistake is to visualize oneself from the outside, as if watching a movie. The initiate knows he must enter the scene. The assumption must be in the first person. You don't see yourself receiving the award. You feel the weight of the award in your hands. You see the audience from your eyes. You hear the applause with your ears. You don't see yourself in the perfect relationship. You feel the warmth of your partner's hand in yours. You hear their voice. You smell their perfume. You don't see yourself being healthy. You feel the energy vibrating in your body. You feel the ease of your breathing. You feel the strength in your muscles. Living as if is the art of closing your eyes to the world of the senses for a moment and opening the senses of your soul and experiencing your wish fulfilled as a present, solid and sensorially vivid reality. This act, this rehearsal in the theater of the mind, is what impregnates the subconscious with the certainty that the new reality is already a fact. The master creator knows that clarity is power. Before entering the theater of his mind, he first writes the script. He takes his journal and, with the precision of a screenwriter, defines the scene he is going to rehearse. His first question is, what is the simplest and most natural scene that, if it were to happen, would imply that my wish is already an accomplished fact? The initiate knows he should not choose the scene of the manifestation itself, receiving the money, meeting the person, because it is often charged with an excitement that is difficult to sustain. He chooses instead a scene that would take place right after, a moment of calm, of naturalness, of already accepted reality. If the desire is prosperity, the scene could be a conversation with a loved one in which he casually says, "I've never felt so financially secure." If the desire is healing, the scene could be one of tying his shoelaces to go for a run, a simple act that was previously impossible for him. If the desire is love, the scene could be of him on the sofa, with his partner's head in his lap, feeling a deep and quiet sense of belonging. Once the scene is chosen, the initiate writes it in his journal, not as a story, but as a first-person sensory script. He details what he sees through his own eyes, what sounds he hears, what textures he feels, and most importantly, what is the central emotion that permeates the entire scene. Relief, gratitude, peace. This script is his score. The second practice, the nightly rehearsal. The master knows that the most powerful stage, the theater where the subconscious is the only and most receptive audience, is the drowsy state, the portal between waking and sleeping. Every night, he prepares for his rehearsal. He lies down, relaxes his body completely, and once he feels that the guardian of the logical mind is beginning to doze off, the real work begins. He doesn't force it. He simply, with a gentle intention, enters the scene he has scripted. He lives it, in the first person. He feels the congratulatory handshake. He hears the words of his friend. He feels the wave of calm and gratitude. And then the curtain falls. He returns to the beginning of the brief scene and repeats it, over and over, like a lullaby, like a gentle sensory and emotional mantra. The goal is not to stay awake and analyze the scene. It is to repeat it with a drowsy passivity until the feeling of reality floods him, and then he falls asleep. He falls asleep in the midst of his wish fulfilled, in his new home, in his new state of being. This act of impregnating the subconscious mind just before sleep is the most potent act of manifestation that exists. You are handing the finished movie to the most powerful projector in the universe, just before it begins its 8-hour shift of building your world. The third practice, the daytime embodiment, the nightly rehearsal plants the seed. The daytime embodiment waters it, The master knows he must be loyal to his role during waking hours. His practice during the day is to carry with him the feeling of his nightly scene. Throughout his tasks, in the midst of his conversations, he constantly asks himself, how would the person who last night, in his imagination, already achieved his goal, walk, talk, and make decisions? And he acts from that serene confidence. It is not about performing grand theatrical gestures. They are subtle changes. Perhaps he walks with his back a little straighter. Perhaps his tone of voice is a little calmer and more confident. Perhaps when faced with a small expense, instead of feeling the contraction of scarcity, he allows himself to feel the expansion of abundance. He is not pretending for the world. He is reinforcing the truth for himself. Each of these small conscious actions is a physical affirmation, a bodily amen that tells his subconscious, yes, this is the new reality. Keep building. The theater of the future is not a place of escape. It is the most powerful construction workshop in the universe. You are not pretending a new life. You are rehearsing until it becomes your one and only true life. You have learned to command reality, not with brute force, but with the subtle art of assumption. You have learned to live within yourself, as if your wish were already a fact. But what happens when the mirror of the world shows you an image that contradicts your rehearsal? How do you maintain your role as king when your circumstances scream that you are a beggar? To do that, you must master the discipline that sustains all of creation. In the next chapter, we will explore the second secret, the power of the mental diet. Chapter 6. The Poison of Doubt, the Antidote of Faith. We must now talk about the most insidious, most subtle, and most lethal enemy of all manifestation. We must face the guardian of the old reality, the saboteur who masquerades as logic and reason. We must talk about doubt. If assumption is the act of planting the seed, doubt is the act of digging it up every 5 minutes to see if it is growing. It is the poison that is poured onto the fertile ground, making it acidic and inhospitable to new life. No matter how powerful your intention is, no matter how vivid your visualization, if you allow the poison of doubt to seep into your consciousness, your creation will die before it can sprout. The anatomy of doubt. The inner saboteur. To be able to defeat this enemy, we must first understand its nature and its strategy. Doubt is not a simple state of not believing. It is an active and powerful belief in the negative. It is the thought, charged with the emotion of fear, that says, "This is too good to be true. This can't work for me. I'm going to fail." Doubt is the ego's immune system. It is the defense mechanism of your old identity. When you introduce a new and expansive vision of yourself, your old self, the one that feels like a victim, the one that believes it is unworthy, the one that is comfortable in its limitation, perceives it as a mortal threat. And to protect its existence, it deploys its most potent weapon, doubt. Doubt is the ego's attempt to drag you back into the security of the familiar prison. The 3 faces of doubt. This poison is administered in 3 doses, each directed at a different part of our being. 1. Intellectual doubt, the tyranny of how. This is the doubt of the rational mind. It is the saboteur that masquerades as intelligence and logic. Once you have assumed your desire, this voice appears and begins its interrogation. I don't see how this is possible. Logic and evidence say this can't happen. You don't have a plan, you don't know the steps, you're a fool. This doubt is born from the ego's arrogance, from its belief that it needs to understand and control every step of the creative process. It is the inability to surrender to a higher intelligence. The ego, with its limited vision, can only conceive of paths it already knows, solutions based on its past experience. It cannot conceive of the miraculous, the synchronistic, the infinite, and elegant ways the universe can orchestrate a manifestation. When you get entangled in intellectual doubt, when you obsess over the how, you are trying to fit the infinite ocean of possibility into the small glass of your intellect. It is an act of limitation. You are, in essence, telling the universe, I will only accept my desire if it comes in the one and limited way my small mind can conceive. And in doing so, you close the door to all other possibilities. Emotional doubt, the impatience of the heart. This is the doubt that arises from the temporary delay between your imaginary act and its physical manifestation. It is the doubt that is born from feeling. You have been practicing your assumption for a week, a month, and you look in the mirror of the world and the reflection is still the same. And then the emotion arises: desperation, frustration, disappointment. I've been doing this and nothing has happened. Maybe it doesn't work for me. I'm wasting my time. This emotional doubt is an incredibly potent negative prayer. Every time you feel the frustration of waiting, you are emitting a vibration of lack. You are shouting at the universe, "My desire is not here." And the universe, which always responds to your dominant vibration, proves you right, reflecting more of the absence of your desire. Impatience is a form of distrust. It is proof that you don't really believe the seed you planted will grow. A gardener who trusts in the law of nature doesn't despair if he doesn't see the sprout the next day. He knows that gestation happens in the invisible. Sensory doubt, the tyranny of facts. This is the most powerful and most difficult form of doubt to overcome. It is when your five senses present you with irrefutable proof that directly contradicts your assumption. You assume the state of perfect health, and the next day, the doctor gives you a negative diagnosis. You assume the state of prosperity, and the next day, you receive a foreclosure notice. You assume the state of a harmonious relationship, and the next day you have a terrible argument with your partner. This is the moment of the great test for the initiate. It is the final battle between two realities: the invisible reality of your assumption and the visible reality of your circumstances. The senses scream, "Look, this is what's real, your imagination is a lie." And the temptation to abandon the assumption and fall back into the old state of fear and desperation is immense. Most people at this point give up. They conclude that metaphysics doesn't work and that they are condemned to their current reality. The poison in action, the cancellation order. Every time you give in to any of these three forms of doubt, you are performing an act of cancellation. Doubt is the counter-command that invalidates your original decree. It's like sending an email with an important order and 5 minutes later, sending another one that says, "Please, ignore my previous message." The subconscious mind, upon receiving these two contradictory commands, that of your assumption, "I am rich," and that of your doubt, "I am not rich," is paralyzed. It cannot build two opposing buildings on the same ground. And since doubt is usually charged with a much stronger emotion, fear, than assumption, nascent faith, the subconscious, by default, obeys the more potent command. And it continues to build the old reality of scarcity and failure. Doubt is not a harmless feeling. It is a creative poison. It is the acid that dissolves the fabric of your new reality before it has a chance to solidify. To become a master of manifestation, you must first become a master of neutralizing this poison. The antidote, the true nature of faith. We have examined the poison of doubt in all its forms. We have seen how it infiltrates our consciousness to sabotage our creation. Now we must explore the only antidote, an antidote that is not a passive emotion, but an active discipline, a force that is not blind hope, but a silent certainty. We must talk about faith. As with forgiveness, our culture has deeply misunderstood the nature of faith. We have equated it with hope, with an optimistic wish that things will turn out well. But hope, from a metaphysical perspective, is still an admission of doubt. Hoping for something to happen is admitting that it might not happen. True faith, the kind that acts as the antidote to doubt, has nothing to do with hope. Faith is not the belief that God or the universe will give you what you want. Faith is the unshakable conviction that you have already received it on the plane of consciousness, where all creation begins. Faith is not a mystical gift that some have and others do not. It is a muscle that, like any other, is strengthened with training. And the gym where the muscle of faith is trained is the battlefield of your daily life. Every time you are faced with the evidence of your senses that contradicts your desire, every time the serpent of doubt whispers in your ear, you are presented with a choice. You can give in to doubt, reinforcing the muscle of powerlessness. Or you can, with an act of sovereign will, withdraw your attention from doubt and return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Every time you do this, you are doing a rep in the gym of the soul. You are strengthening the muscle of faith. The training program for this muscle is the discipline we have already mentioned, the mental diet, the workshop of the faithful warrior. The practices of faith. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets does not leave his faith to chance. He becomes a faithful warrior, the guardian of his own vision. His practice is to maintain the purity of his consciousness. The first practice, the guardian at the gate, sovereign indifference. The master knows that he cannot prevent thoughts of doubt from coming to the door of his mind, but he has the absolute power to decide whether to let them in. His practice is that of sovereign indifference. When a thought of doubt or fear appears, the initiate does not fight it. He does not get angry with himself for having it. He simply observes it with a quiet detachment, as if he were seeing an unwelcome stranger at his door. He acknowledges the visitor. Here's the thought of this is not going to work. He does not engage, he does not offer it a chair. He does not start a conversation. He does not give it his energy. He withdraws attention, and then he simply closes the door in its face. Not with anger, but with a calm and sovereign indifference. He withdraws his attention from it, and immediately and deliberately returns his attention to his inner home, to the feeling of his wish already fulfilled. This practice, repeated over and over, teaches the mind that thoughts of doubt are no longer welcome, that they no longer have power. The second practice, the alchemy of revision. The master knows that sometimes during the day, in a moment of carelessness, the poison of doubt can seep in. An external event can trigger an old reaction of fear or frustration, pulling him out of his state of assumption. To purify his consciousness before sleep, he practices the alchemical art of revision. As we have explored, the initiate, in his drowsy state, reviews the events of the day. If he finds a scene where he gave in to doubt or fear, he isolates it in the theater of his mind. And then, like a film director, he rewrites it. The conversation in which he stammered out of insecurity is rewritten as a fluid and confident dialogue. The moment of panic upon seeing a bill is rewritten as a moment of calm and gratitude. He repeats the revised scene, charging it with the feeling of his ideal state, until it feels more real than the original fact. This act is not self-deception. It is karmic cleansing. It is refusing to allow the negative energy of a moment to become a seed for the next day. It is the act of going to sleep with a clean consciousness, aligned with the desired vision. The third practice, the fast from external evidence. The faithful warrior understands that he should not feed his enemies. Therefore, during the gestation period of his desire, he puts his 5 senses on a fast from negative evidence. This is one of the most difficult and most powerful disciplines. It consists of the conscious choice to withdraw your attention from anything that contradicts your assumption. If you are assuming wealth, you stop obsessively looking at alarmist economic news. You stop participating in conversations of complaint about the crisis. You stop compulsively checking your bank account, looking for proof. If you are assuming health, you stop looking up your symptoms on the internet. You stop constantly talking about your illness. You are not denying reality. You are refusing to give it your creative power. You are starving the old reality, depriving it of the only nutrient that keeps it alive, your attention. And at the same time, you are directing all that released energy to nourish the new reality within you. Doubt and faith are 2 sides of the same coin. Belief. Doubt is the belief in failure, in limitation, in the evidence of the senses. Faith is the belief in success, in possibility, in the evidence of the invisible. You, as the sovereign of your mind, are the only one who decides which side of the coin to look at. The poison of doubt dissolves in the antidote of a persistent faith. You have learned to protect your creation. You have learned to be loyal to your vision, even when the world shouts that it is impossible. Chapter 7. The Secret of Fertile Emptiness, the Power of Detachment. Our culture has demonized the word surrender. We equate it with defeat, weakness, passivity, the act of giving up. But in metaphysics, surrender has nothing to do with defeat. It is, in fact, the act of supreme power. It is the final transition from the consciousness of the doer to that of the creator. Surrender in this context is not a passive resignation. It is an active trust. It is not ceasing to act. It is ceasing to force. It is the act of letting go of your small, limited egoic control to allow an infinitely greater and wiser intelligence, that of the universe, to take the reins and orchestrate the outcome in a way that your logical mind could never conceive. Let's remember the metaphor of the gardener. The wise gardener chooses the seed, the assumption. He prepares the ground and protects it from weeds, the mental diet. And once he has done his part, what does he do? He surrenders. He trusts in the immutable laws of nature. He trusts the sun, the rain, and the inherent intelligence of the seed itself to do their work. He does not dig up the seed every day to see if it is growing. He does not try to open it with his hands to help it germinate. He knows that such interference, born of impatience and lack of faith, can only destroy the creation. Your desire is that seed. Your subconscious mind and the quantum field are the fertile ground and the laws of nature. Your only job is to plant and care, and then surrender to the process. The tyranny of how, the greatest obstacle to manifestation. The biggest barrier to this act of surrender is our conscious mind's obsession with the how. Once we have set our intention, the ego, with its insatiable need for control, immediately starts to anxiously ask, but how is it going to happen? What's the plan? What are the steps? What if it doesn't work? The conscious mind is a brilliant tool for analysis, but it is a terrible master creator. Its only capacity is to build with the bricks of its past experience. It can only conceive of paths it already knows, solutions based on its past experience. It cannot conceive of the miraculous, the synchronistic, the unexpected. When you obsess over the how, you are, in essence, telling the universe, I don't trust your intelligence. I don't trust your creativity. I am going to limit the infinite ways my desire could manifest to the few and well-trodden paths that my small logical mind can conceive. This need to control the how is born from a deep lack of faith and a fundamental fear. It is the vibration of doubt, and this vibration, as we already know, is a counter-command. It's like sending a letter to the universe with your order, and immediately after, sending another one cancelling it. The master of metaphysics understands that his job is to define the what with absolute clarity and to feel the why with unshakable passion. And then he completely hands over the how to the wisdom of the universe. He knows that the quantum field, having access to all variables, all people, all possibilities, can orchestrate the fastest, most elegant, and most harmonious path to his goal, a path that is often invisible to his limited vision. Imagine two entrepreneurs who want to manifest success for their new business. Both do the inner work of assumption. The first, operating from the ego, obsesses over the how. He creates a 100-page business plan, clings to it rigidly, and works 18 hours a day to force its fulfillment. When an unexpected opportunity that deviates from the plan appears, he rejects it. When a door closes, he tries to knock it down with force. His path is one of immense effort, constant struggle, and his energy of control and tension often repels partners and clients. The second, the initiate, defines his vision of success with clarity and feels the joy of his already prosperous business, and then he surrenders. Each day, instead of asking himself, how am I going to make this work? He asks, what is the next inspired step? And he listens. Perhaps one day the impulse is to call an old friend, and that call leads him to an unexpected investor. Perhaps another day he feels the impulse to do nothing but read, and in that book he finds the idea that revolutionizes his business model. He doesn't follow a rigid plan. He follows the current of synchronicity. His path is one of flow of grace, and his energy of confidence and openness is magnetic. Both may achieve success, but one arrives exhausted, the other energized. One arrives by force, the other by flow. The nature of fertile emptiness surrender is not a state of passive, boring waiting. It is a state of fertile emptiness. It is a vibrant stillness, an active patience, a confident expectation. It is the state of the master hunter who waits in the forest. He is completely motionless, but every one of his senses is awake, alert, receptive. He is not anxious. He is not impatient. He simply waits with the certainty that at the perfect moment his prey will appear. This fertile silence is the Sabbath that Neville Goddard spoke of. It is the seventh day of creation, the day of rest. You have performed your creative work in the imagination. You have assumed your desire as a fact, and now you enter a state of mental and emotional rest. You rest in faith. You rest in the silent certainty that what you have created in the invisible world is at this very instant moving through the fabric of space and time to manifest in your visible world. There is nothing more to do on the plane of intention. The spell has been cast. The seed has been planted. Now all that remains is to tend the garden and wait for the sprout to appear. True faith, the kind that fertile emptiness requires, has nothing to do with hope. Faith is not the belief that God or the universe will give you what you want. Faith is the unshakable conviction that you have already received it on the plane of consciousness, where all creation begins. Faith is not an emotion. It is a state of being. It is the unshakable loyalty to invisible reality. It is the conscious and deliberate choice to give more validity and more attention to the truth of your inner assumption than to the contradictory facts of your outer. World faith is not a mystical gift that some have and others do not. It is a muscle that, like any other, is strengthened with training. And the gym where the muscle of faith is trained is the battlefield of your daily life. Every time you are faced with the evidence of your senses that contradicts your desire, every time the serpent of doubt whispers in your ear, you are presented with a choice. You can give in to doubt, reinforcing the muscle of powerlessness. Or you can, with an act of sovereign will, withdraw your attention from doubt and return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Every time you do this, you are doing a rep in the gym of the soul. You are strengthening the muscle of faith, the workshop of fertile silence integrated practices. The initiate does not leave this state of surrender to chance. He cultivates it with a subtle discipline in the silent workshop of his own consciousness. The first practice is the ritual of handover. The master knows that the ego will not let go of control easily. Therefore, he performs a formal ceremony of power transfer. In his nightly meditation, after having performed his act of assumption, he visualizes his desire not as an image, but as a sphere of bright, perfect light. He holds this sphere in his imaginal hands. He feels its weight, its vibration, its reality. And then, with an act of deep humility and trust, he raises his hands and hands that sphere of light over to a higher intelligence, to the universal mind, to his higher self, to the intelligence of the quantum field, and as he does, he pronounces a decree of liberation. It is not a plea, it is a transfer. He says inwardly, "Infinite intelligence of the universe, I have completed my work. I have created this blueprint in the only place I can, in my own consciousness. Now, with absolute faith, I hand over the how and the when to you. I trust in your wisdom to orchestrate its manifestation in the most perfect way. It is no longer my concern. It is done." This ritual is an act of psychomagic of immense power. It gives the ego a concrete action to perform, handing over, which satisfies its need to do something, and at the same time, it teaches it the art of letting go. The second practice is the synchronicity hunt. Once the initiate has let go of control, he does not become passive. He becomes an exquisitely attentive observer. He knows that the universe, now that it has the space to work, will begin to send him signals, to leave him breadcrumbs on the path. He keeps a synchronicity journal. He notes the meaningful coincidences, the song he heard, the conversation he overheard by chance, the book that fell open to a page. He does not overanalyze them. He simply receives them as a wink from the universe, as a confirmation that the spell is underway. This practice keeps him in a state of playful dialogue with reality and reinforces his faith. And the third and perhaps most important practice is the differentiation of inspired action from forced action. Surrender does not mean inaction. It means the end of action born from panic, anxiety, and the need to control. Forced action feels heavy, like a struggle, like something you should do. Inspired action, which is the universe's response, feels light, obvious, effortless. It is a sudden impulse that comes from a place of calm. I should call this person. I should go to this place. The master learns to wait for this impulse. He does not force movement. He spends his days tending his garden, maintaining his state of grateful faith. And when the inspired impulse arrives, he acts on it immediately and without hesitation. He knows that this is the next piece of the puzzle that the universe is handing him. It is the dance between being and doing. Fertile emptiness is the sacred space of gestation. It is the trust of the artist who, having planted the seed of his intention, allows the mystery of life to do its work, knowing that no amount of anxious effort can make a flower open before its time. You have learned to assume your new reality, to protect it with the discipline of a mental diet, and finally to hand it over to the universe with the serene faith of surrender. You have completed the cycle of inner creation. Now in the final chapters of our manual, we will become the masters of application. We will take this forbidden knowledge and focus it like a laser on the great arenas of life. Chapter 8. The Silent Language, Intuition and Synchronicity. This is the silent language, the system of direct communication between your individual consciousness and the universal mind. It is the way the universe guides you across the bridge of incidents that will lead you to the manifestation of your desire. This language has two inseparable dialects: intuition, which is the voice of the universe speaking within you, and synchronicity, which is the voice of the universe speaking through the circumstances of your life. Mastering this language is the final step to moving from being a creator who operates blindly to being a co-creator who dances in perfect harmony with the cosmos. The anatomy of intuition. The whisper of the soul before you can hear the voice of your intuition. You must first understand what it is and, above all, what it is not. Our culture, obsessed with logic and data, has atrophied our intuitive muscle. We have forgotten how to recognize its voice, often confusing it with the noise of fear or desire. Intuition is not a thought. Thought is a linear analytical process that builds conclusions based on information from the past. Intuition is a quantum leap. It is a download of knowledge that arrives in your consciousness instantly, completely, and often without any apparent logical basis. It is the answer that arrives without you knowing the process. The master knows that two reality processing systems coexist within him: the rational mind, which is like a GPS. It is brilliant at calculating routes based on maps that already exist, your past experiences. But it cannot conceive a path that is not in its database, the intuitive mind, which is like an oracle. It does not need a map. It is connected directly to the field of all possibilities and can perceive the path of least energetic resistance, the most elegant route, even if that route seems illogical or impossible to the GPS. The conscious creator's journey is to learn to balance these two minds, to use logic as a tool to execute, but to trust intuition as the compass to navigate. To recognize the voice of intuition, we must learn to differentiate it from its two great imposters, fear and desire. The voice of fear is always contractive. It feels heavy in the body. Its message is one of limitation, of warning, of be careful. It is often noisy, repetitive, and charged with anxiety. The voice of egoic desire is often excited, impatient, and needy. Its message is, I want it now. It is attached to a specific outcome and often ignores red flags. The voice of intuition, on the other hand, is almost always calm, neutral, and expansive. It does not shout for your attention. It is a whisper, a serene knowing. It does not have an emotional charge of need or fear. It simply presents a truth. A decision that is aligned with intuition feels correct on a deep level, a feeling of peace and resonance, even if that decision scares you at the ego level. The initiate knows that his body is the main receiver of intuition. The silent language translates into physical sensations. An intuitive yes often feels like an expansion in the chest, a feeling of lightness, a subtle warmth, the goosebumps that confirm a truth. An intuitive no often feels like a contraction in the stomach, a knot, a feeling of heaviness, an inexplicable resistance to moving forward. The master's practice is that of somatic listening. Faced with a decision, he doesn't just analyze it with his mind. He pauses, he breathes, and he asks his body, how does this feel? He learns to trust the wisdom of his cells over the often deceptive arguments of his intellect. To be able to hear this whisper, silence is a prerequisite. Intuition cannot be heard in the midst of the noise of an anxious mind. That is why the practice of meditation, of mental calm, is not just for relaxation. It is the act of cleaning the telephone line to be able to hear the call of infinite intelligence. It is in stillness that the soul speaks. Synchronicity, the echo of the universe. If intuition is the whisper of the universe within you, synchronicity is its echo in the external world. It is the way the living mirror winks at you, confirming that it has received your command and is reorganizing reality for you. Synchronicity, a term coined by the psychologist Carl Jung, is a meaningful coincidence. It is not a simple random event. It is the alignment of an external event with an internal state in such a perfect way that it defies all logical explanation and gives you a feeling of awe. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets does not believe in coincidences. He understands that the universe is a network of interconnected meaning and that synchronicity is the manifestation of that network. It is the proof that you are in the flow. This language manifests in countless ways. The synchronicity of information. You are dealing with a problem and you open a book to a random page that contains the solution. Or you turn on the radio and the first song you hear seems to speak directly to your heart. The synchronicity of encounter. You think of an old friend you haven't talked to in years, and at that instant, you receive a message from them. Or you need a contact in a specific industry, and the next day, you are seated next to the perfect person on a plane. The synchronicity of the symbol. You start to see a number, a word or a symbol repeated everywhere, on car license plates, on receipts, on signs. These are not necessarily messages with a complex, hidden meaning. They are often simple reminders from the universe that say, I am here. I have heard you. You are on the right path. Keep trusting. The key to experiencing more synchronicity is not to look for it with anxiety. It is, again, surrender and relaxed attention. When you surrender to the flow and trust that a higher intelligence is guiding you, your mind stops being obsessed with finding the solution itself and opens up to receiving it in unexpected ways. And when you cultivate a state of presence, of attention to the moment, you begin to notice the subtle connections and patterns that a distracted and worried mind always overlooks. The universe is always speaking to you, both from within and from without. The only problem is that we have forgotten how to listen to its silent language. The initiate in Metaphysical Secrets does not leave his connection to the silent language to chance. He knows that his intuition is a muscle that must be trained, and that his ability to perceive synchronicity depends on the clarity of his own signal. Therefore, he dedicates himself to a series of practices designed to tune his antenna and learn to trust the guidance he receives. The first practice, the cultivation of inner silence. The master knows that to hear a whisper, he must first turn off the deafening noise of the analytical mind. His fundamental practice is the creation of a sanctuary of silence. The initiate dedicates time each day to meditation, not with the goal of stopping his thoughts, but with that of de-identifying from them. He sits in silence and becomes the observer, the sky that allows the clouds of his thoughts to pass. He knows that this is not a passive act. It is the active practice of clearing the radio static to be able to hear the subtle broadcast of his soul. He spends time in nature. He knows that nature is the great tuner. Walking in a forest, sitting by the sea, watching the stars. These activities calm the nervous system and return us to our natural rhythm, a state in which intuition can flourish. He uses his journal not just to write, but to listen. The initiate often begins his writing practice with a clear question directed to his inner wisdom. And then he simply starts writing, allowing the answer to flow through his pen, often surprising himself with the wisdom that emerges from the silence on the page. The second practice, the art of the empowered question. The master does not ask the universe for answers like a beggar. He asks it high-quality questions, like a scientist who dialogues with a brilliant colleague. He knows that the quality of his question determines the quality of the guidance he receives. He stops asking questions that are born of the victim, such as, "Why is this happening to me?" And he starts asking questions that are born of the Creator. These questions do not seek blame. They seek possibilities. They do not seek certainties. They seek expansion. The initiate cultivates a new vocabulary of questions. Instead of "What should I do?" he asks, "What is the next most expansive, joyful, and aligned step I can take?" Instead of "Will this work?" he asks, "Universe, show me the path of least resistance to the manifestation of this vision." Instead of "Is this the right person?" Tari asks, "Does this connection reflect the harmony I have chosen to embody?" These questions are not for the logical mind. They are portals. They are invitations that open a space for the universe to show him the way. The third practice, the test of trust, acting on impulse. Hearing intuition is one thing. Having the courage to act on it especially when it challenges logic, is true mastery. The initiate understands that he must build the muscle of intuitive trust, and like any muscle, it is strengthened with training, starting with small weights. The practice is that of obedience to small impulses. Throughout the day, the initiate pays attention to the small, illogical whispers. Take this street instead of the usual one. Call that person you haven't thought of in years. Go into that bookstore for no apparent reason. At first, these actions may seem trivial. Often, nothing miraculous happens, but that's not what's important. The initiate is not looking for a result. He is practicing the act of trusting his inner guidance. He is demonstrating to the universe that he is listening. As his trust in these small impulses grows, the universe begins to send him increasingly clear guidance on more important matters. He knows he cannot expect to receive guidance for $1 million decision if he has been ignoring the impulse to greet a stranger. Imagine an artist who feels her career is stagnant. She has done her inner work and has asked for a new opportunity. One afternoon, while meditating, she receives a clear, intuitive impulse. Go to the old port district. Her logical mind protests. Why? There's nothing there. It's a waste of time. But she, practicing the art of trust, obeys. She wanders aimlessly through the old streets, and her attention is drawn to the color of a faded blue door. She feels an inexplicable urge to photograph it. Over the next few weeks, she follows these impulses, photographing textures, colors, and forgotten shapes of the city. One day, while reviewing the photos, an idea for a new series of abstract paintings comes to her mind with overwhelming clarity. That series becomes the most acclaimed of her career. The opportunity did not come through a call from a gallery. It came through an illogical whisper that she had the courage to follow. The silent language is not a gift reserved for a few mystics. It is your birthright. It is the GPS of your soul, always on, always transmitting the most elegant route to your destination. Chapter 9. The Sacred Discipline of Persistence. We must now talk about the most insidious, most subtle, and most lethal enemy of all manifestation. We must face the guardian of the old reality, the saboteur who masquerades as logic and reason. We must talk about doubt. If assumption is the act of planting the seed, doubt is the act of digging it up every 5 minutes to see if it is growing. It is the poison that is poured onto the fertile ground, making it acidic and inhospitable to new life. No matter how powerful your intention is, no matter how vivid your visualization, if you allow the poison of doubt to seep into your consciousness, your creation will die before it can sprout. The anatomy of doubt, the inner saboteur. To be able to defeat this enemy, we must first understand its nature and its strategy. Doubt is not a simple state of not believing. It is an active and powerful belief in the negative. It is the thought, charged with the emotion of fear, that says, "This is too good to be true. This can't work for me. I'm going to fail." Doubt is the ego's immune system. It is the defense mechanism of your old identity. When you introduce a new and expansive vision of yourself, your old self, the one that feels like a victim, the one that believes it is unworthy, the one that is comfortable in its limitation, perceives it as a mortal threat, and to protect its existence, it deploys its most potent weapon, doubt. Doubt is the ego's attempt to drag you back into the security of the familiar prison. The 3 faces of doubt. This poison is administered in 3 doses, each directed at a different part of our being. Intellectual doubt, the tyranny of how. This is the doubt of the rational mind. It is the saboteur that masquerades as intelligence and logic. Once you have assumed your desire, this voice appears and begins its interrogation. I don't see how this is possible. Logic and evidence say this can't happen. You don't have a plan. You don't know the steps. You're a fool. This doubt is born from the ego's arrogance, from its belief that it needs to understand and control every step of the creative process. It is the inability to surrender to a higher intelligence. The ego, with its limited vision, can only conceive of paths it already knows, solutions based on its past experience. It cannot conceive of the miraculous, the synchronistic, the infinite and elegant ways the universe can orchestrate a manifestation. When you get entangled in intellectual doubt, when you obsess over the how, you are trying to fit the infinite ocean of possibility into the small glass of your intellect. It is an act of limitation. You are, in essence, telling the universe, I will only accept my desire if it comes in the one and limited way my small mind can conceive. And in doing so, you close the door to all other possibilities. Emotional doubt, the impatience of the heart. This is the doubt that arises from the temporary delay between your imaginary act and its physical manifestation. It is the doubt that is born from feeling. You have been practicing your assumption for a week, a month, and you look in the mirror of the world, and the reflection is still the same. And then the emotion arises, desperation, frustration, disappointment. I've been doing this and nothing has happened. Maybe it doesn't work for me. I'm wasting my time. This emotional doubt is an incredibly potent negative prayer. Every time you feel the frustration of waiting, you are emitting a vibration of lack. You are shouting at the universe, "My desire is not here." And the universe, which always responds to your dominant vibration, proves you right, reflecting more of the absence of your desire. Impatience is a form of distrust. It is proof that you don't really believe the seed you planted will grow. A gardener who trusts in the law of nature doesn't despair if he doesn't see the sprout the next day. He knows that gestation happens in the invisible. Sensory doubt, the tyranny of facts. This is the most powerful and most difficult form of doubt to overcome. It is when your five senses present you with irrefutable proof that directly contradicts your assumption. You assume the state of perfect health, and the next day the doctor gives you a negative diagnosis. You assume the state of prosperity, and the next day you receive a foreclosure notice. You assume the state of a harmonious relationship, and the next day you have a terrible argument with your partner. This is the moment of the great test for the initiate. It is the final battle between two realities, the invisible reality of your assumption and the visible reality of your circumstances. The senses scream, "Look, this is what's real. Your imagination is a lie." And the temptation to abandon the assumption and fall back into the old state of fear and desperation is immense. Most people at this point give up. They conclude that metaphysics doesn't work and that they are condemned to their current reality. The poison in action, the cancellation order. Every time you give in to any of these three forms of doubt, you are performing an act of cancellation. Doubt is the countercommand that invalidates your original decree. It is like sending an email with an important order and 5 minutes later sending another one that says, "Please ignore my previous message." The subconscious mind, upon receiving these two contradictory commands, that of your assumption, "I am rich," and that of your doubt, "I am not rich," is paralyzed. It cannot build two opposing buildings on the same ground. And since doubt is usually charged with a much stronger emotion, fear, than assumption, nascent faith, the subconscious, by default, obeys the more potent command. And it continues to build the old reality of scarcity and failure. Doubt is not a harmless feeling. It is a creative poison. It is the acid that dissolves the fabric of your new reality before it has a chance to solidify. To become a master of manifestation, you must first become a master of neutralizing this poison. As with forgiveness, our culture has deeply misunderstood the nature of faith. We have equated it with hope, with an optimistic wish that things will turn out well. But hope, from a metaphysical perspective, is still an admission of doubt. Hoping for something to happen is admitting that it might not happen. True faith, the kind that acts as the antidote to doubt, has nothing to do with hope. Faith is not the belief that God or the universe will give you what you want. Faith is the unshakable conviction that you have already received it on the plane of consciousness, where all creation begins. Faith is not an emotion. It is a state of being. It is the unshakable loyalty to invisible reality. It is the conscious and deliberate choice to give more validity and more attention to the truth of your inner assumption than to the contradictory facts of your outer world. Faith is not a mystical gift that some have and others do not. It is a muscle that, like any other, is strengthened with training. And the gym where the muscle of faith is trained is the battlefield of your daily life. Every time you are faced with the evidence of your senses that contradicts your desire, every time the serpent of doubt whispers in your ear, you are presented with a choice. You can give in to doubt, reinforcing the muscle of powerlessness. Or you can, with an act of sovereign will, withdraw your attention from doubt and return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Every time you do this, you are doing a rep in the gym of the soul. You are strengthening the muscle of faith, the workshop of the faithful warrior. The practices of faith, the initiate in Metaphysical Secrets, does not leave his faith to chance. He becomes a faithful warrior, the guardian of his own vision. His practice is to maintain the purity of his consciousness. The first practice, the guardian at the gate, sovereign indifference. The master knows that he cannot prevent thoughts of doubt from coming to the door of his mind, but he has the absolute power to decide whether to let them in. His practice is that of sovereign indifference. When a thought of doubt or fear appears, the initiate does not fight it. He does not get angry with himself for having it. He simply observes it with a quiet detachment, as if he were seeing an unwelcome stranger at his door. He acknowledges the visitor. Ah, here's the thought of this is not going to work. He does not engage. He does not offer it a chair. He does not start a conversation. He does not give it his energy. He withdraws attention, and then he simply closes the door in its face, not with anger, but with a calm and sovereign indifference. He withdraws his attention from it and, immediately and deliberately, returns his attention to his inner home, to the feeling of his wish already fulfilled. This practice, repeated over and over, teaches the mind that thoughts of doubt are no longer welcome, that they no longer have power. The second practice, the alchemy of revision. The master knows that sometimes during the day, in a moment of carelessness, the poison of doubt can seep in. An external event can trigger an old reaction of fear or frustration, pulling him out of his state of assumption. To purify his consciousness before sleep, he practices the alchemical art of revision. As we have explored, the initiate, in his drowsy state, reviews the events of the day. If he finds a scene where he gave in to doubt or fear, he isolates it in the theater of his mind, and then, like a film director, he rewrites it. The conversation in which he stammered out of insecurity is rewritten as a fluid and confident dialogue. The moment of panic upon seeing a bill is rewritten as a moment of calm and gratitude. He repeats the revised scene, charging it with the feeling of his ideal state, until it feels more real than the original fact. This act is not self-deception. It is karmic cleansing. It is refusing to allow the negative energy of a moment to become a seed for the next day. It is the act of going to sleep with a clean consciousness, aligned with the desired vision. The third practice, the fast from external evidence. The faithful warrior understands that he should not feed his enemies. Therefore, during the gestation period of his desire, he puts his 5 senses on a fast from negative evidence. This is one of the most difficult and most powerful disciplines. It consists of the conscious choice to withdraw your attention from anything that contradicts your assumption. If you are assuming wealth, you stop obsessively looking at alarmist economic news. You stop participating in conversations of complaint about the crisis. You stop compulsively checking your bank account, looking for proof. If you are assuming health, you stop looking up your symptoms on the internet. You stop constantly talking about your illness. You are not denying reality. You are refusing to give it your creative power. You are starving the old reality, depriving it of the only nutrient that keeps it alive, your attention. And at the same time, you are directing all that released energy to nourish the new reality within you. Doubt and faith are 2 sides of the same coin, belief. Doubt is the belief in failure, in limitation, in the evidence of the senses. Faith is the belief in success, in possibility, in the evidence of the invisible. You, as the sovereign of your mind, are the only one who decides which side of the coin to look at. The poison of doubt dissolves in the antidote of a persistent faith. You have learned to protect your creation. You have learned to be loyal to your vision, even when the world shouts that it is impossible. Chapter 10. The Crown of Sovereignty, You Are the Force. Welcome to the 10th and final chapter. Welcome to the Crown of Sovereignty. Throughout this journey, we have talked about using the laws of the mind, applying the techniques, directing the power. This language, while useful for the apprentice, still implies a subtle separation. It implies that there is a you here and a power there, a tool that you can wield. The final realization, the secret revealed at the end of the journey, is that there is no tool. There is no force that you use. You are the force. The power that creates worlds is not something you access. It is the essence of what you are. Your consciousness, your I am, is not a channel for power. It is power itself, This is the dissolution of the last illusion, the illusion of the creator. As long as there is an I that is trying to manifest something, there is still a duality. There is still an artist and a canvas. In the state of sovereignty, the artist realizes that he is the paint, the brush and the canvas all at once. Manifestation ceases to be an act of doing and becomes a state of being. You no longer create your life. You allow life to create itself through you. This state of mastery of sovereignty is not a state of arrogance. On the contrary, it is born of the deepest humility, the total surrender of the will of the ego to the will of the universal consciousness that flows through you. And this state manifests through three unmistakable attributes, the three jewels of the crown. The first jewel, causeless peace. The first and most fundamental quality of the sovereign is an unshakable peace. It is not the peace that comes from everything in your life being perfect. It is not the calm you feel when you have achieved all your goals and have no problems. That is the conditional peace of the ego. The sovereign's peace is a causeless peace. It is the peace that underlies all experiences, both good and bad. It is the calm of the deep ocean which is not affected by the storm raging on the surface. This peace is born from de-identification. The sovereign has practiced being the silent witness for so long that it has become his natural state. He experiences thoughts, but he knows he is not his thoughts. He experiences emotions, but he knows he is not his emotions. He experiences the ups and downs of life, but he knows he is not the ups and downs. His identity, his true home, is anchored in pure consciousness, in the I Am, which is by nature silent, immutable, and eternally at peace. Let's imagine a master who receives news of a great financial loss. The untrained mind, identified with its possessions, would panic. Its world would collapse. The sovereign, on the other hand, feels the emotion of loss. He allows sadness or disappointment to pass through him, like a rain cloud passing through the sky. But his core, his identity as the sky itself, remains intact, serene, at peace. Not because he is insensitive, but because he knows that his true wealth, his true security, does not reside in his bank account. It resides in his own consciousness. This causeless peace is what allows him to live with a completely open heart. He is no longer afraid of emotional pain, because he knows that pain cannot harm his true self. This frees him to love with a vulnerability and depth that were previously impossible. It allows him to face life's greatest challenges, not from a place of contraction and fear, but from a center of calm and expansive power. The second jewel, effortless action, Wu Wei. The second quality of the sovereign life is the transformation of action. Life for the lower levels is a struggle. It is a constant pushing, forcing, resisting. It is the energy of effort. From the peak of consciousness, you discover the Taoist principle of Wu Wei, which translates as effortless action or active non-action. This does not mean laziness or passivity. In fact, you often achieve much more. It means that your actions no longer arise from your ego's anxious planning, but emerge, spontaneously and perfectly appropriate, from the intelligence of the present moment. You stop being the rower who struggles against the current, and you become the current itself. In a conversation, you stop planning your next sentence and instead, you listen so deeply that the perfect response simply arises from within you. In your work, you stop forcing creativity and instead, you create a space of calm and play that allows inspiration to flow through you. In a crisis, you stop reacting with panic and instead you become still, waiting for the intuitive impulse that will show you the path of least resistance. Effortless action is the perfectly balanced dance between the masculine and feminine principles of creation. You know when to apply focused intention and decisive action, masculine energy, and you know when to surrender, wait, and receive guidance, feminine energy. Your life stops being a series of problems to be solved and becomes a creative flow in which you participate with a grace that, to others, may seem miraculous. To you, it is simply natural. The third jewel, playful creation, Lila. The third and most joyful of the jewels is the transformation of your perspective on life itself. For the ego, life is a very serious matter. It is a problem to be solved, a test to be passed, a battle to be won. From the peak of consciousness, you realize the truth that the sages of India called Lila, the divine play. You understand that universal consciousness did not create the universe out of a serious and grave necessity, but out of the pure joy of self-expression, out of the joy of the creative dance. And in realizing this, your own life ceases to be a solemn drama and becomes a sacred game. This does not mean you become frivolous or irresponsible. On the contrary, you become the best of players. You commit fully to your roles, that of a parent, a professional, a friend, and you play them with total excellence and presence. But internally, you maintain a lightness, a playful detachment. You know it's a game. When the game presents you with a victory, you celebrate it with genuine joy, but you do not cling to it. When it presents you with a defeat, you feel the emotion of the experience, but you do not suffer, because you know it is just a move on the great board. This perspective frees you from the tyranny of personal importance. It gives you the freedom to be audacious, to be creative, to experiment, to fail with a smile and to try again. The fear of doing it wrong disappears, because you understand that as long as you play with an open heart and an intention of growth, there are no wrong moves. Everything is part of the dance. Life becomes your work of art. Your purpose is no longer to get somewhere, but to paint the canvas of each day with the most vibrant and authentic colors of your own being. Work becomes play. Relationships become a dance. And existence itself becomes a celebration. The peace that depends on nothing, the action that flows effortlessly, and the creation that is born of joy. This is the identity that awaits you at the end of the journey. But how do you live this in practice? What is a day in the life of someone who has reclaimed their crown like? This is the identity that awaits you at the end of the journey. But how do you live this in practice? What is a day in the life of someone who has reclaimed their crown like? The answer is paradoxical. The master's practice is no longer a series of techniques that he does at a specific time. His entire life becomes a practice, a moving meditation. The techniques, visualization, affirmations, were the scaffolding needed to build the building of his new consciousness. Once the building is finished and solid, the scaffolding can be removed. The practice is no longer something he does, but something he is. This state of mastery, of embodiment, is supported by three living pillars. The first pillar, anchored presence, living the I am. The foundation of a masterful life is presence. The sovereign has trained his attention to the point that he can maintain a double-focus consciousness. One part of his attention is engaged with the task at hand, with the conversation he is having, with the world of form. But another part of his attention always remains anchored in the silent background of his own being, in the feeling of the I am. It is like a master musician who, while playing an incredibly complex melody, is always aware of the tonic note, the harmonic center that holds the whole piece together. This constant connection to inner silence is what allows him to move through the world of noise without being swept away by it. The initiate's integrated practice is constant anchoring. In the middle of a business meeting, he feels the energy in the room, but he also feels the calm in his own chest. As he walks through a bustling city, he observes the external chaos, but he is also aware of the silent space of his own presence. In a difficult conversation, he listens to the other's words, but he also listens to the silence beneath them, the essence that communicates beyond language. This double focus is the anchor that keeps him at the pendulum's point of suspension, allowing him to experience life fully without getting lost in it. The second pillar, intuitive alignment, action from the self. The master no longer makes decisions based solely on the ego's logic or on lists of pros and cons. He has learned to trust a higher form of intelligence, the one that emanates from the field of unity. His decision-making process is based on alignment. The practice is the alignment question. Faced with any choice, from the smallest to the most momentous, the sovereign does not ask himself, "What is best for me?" He asks himself, "What choice feels most aligned with the being that I know I am? What path resonates with greater expansion, with greater truth, with greater love?" Sometimes the alignment answer will seem completely illogical to the rational mind. It may ask him to leave a secure but soulless job, or to initiate a vulnerable conversation that his ego fears. But the master has learned through experience that the path of alignment, though sometimes the most difficult in the short term, is always the path of least resistance in the long term. It is the path that the river of life wants to take through him, and he has learned to trust that current. The third pillar, service as an overflow. Finally, the person who lives at the peak of consciousness discovers the true purpose of power: service. But this is not the forced service of the ego's should. It is the natural overflow of his own wholeness. The initiate has spent so much time cultivating his inner garden, nurturing his peace, his love, and his wisdom, that his cup inevitably begins to overflow. And this overflow is his service to the world. The practice is not to ask, "How can I help?" It is to ask, "How can I be the fullest and most authentic expression of myself?" For the artist, service is creating the most beautiful and honest work he can, knowing that its beauty will elevate the consciousness of those who contemplate it. For the entrepreneur, service is building a business that is not only profitable, but that solves a real problem, that treats its employees with dignity, and that operates ethically. For the parent, service is offering their children a presence of unconditional love and calm, creating the environment for another soul to flourish. For the friend, service is simply listening, offering the space of his non-judgmental presence so that the other can find themselves. The master knows that the form of his service is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the source from which it emanates, a heart so full that it cannot help but give. The crown of sovereignty is not a destination you arrive at. It is the truth of what you have always been, waiting to be recognized. It is the end of the war between the self and the universe, and the beginning of a dance. You have completed the manual. You have learned to stop asking and to start commanding. You have learned that power is not something you have, but something you are. The silent force has found its director. The question is no longer how to manifest your life. You have been initiated into the arts of conscious creation. You have learned to embody your desire through assumption, to protect your vision with the discipline of the mental diet, and to receive with serene faith through the power of surrender. The greatest metaphysical secret is not a hidden technique. It is a revelation of identity. The truth is that reality was never your adversary. It has always been your most faithful servant, waiting with infinite patience for you to awaken and give it a clear and coherent command. The chaos you experienced was not the nature of the world. It was simply the reflection of a vacant throne. Your journey does not end with the end of these words. It is now that your reign truly begins. Your practice from this moment on is simple. In every moment, remember that you are in the control room. Every thought you hold, every feeling you embody, is a command. The question is no longer whether the universe is listening. The question is, what are you commanding it? You are not a victim of life. You are its sovereign. If this manual for commanding reality has resonated with you and awakened the master within you, we invite you to continue this exploration. Subscribe to our channel Path of Knowledge for more wisdom that liberates. Like this video as a declaration of your sovereign power. Share this knowledge with someone who is ready to claim their throne. Thank you for your time, for your courage, and for the brave decision to stop being the subject of your life and, at last, become its creator.